Hello and welcome to the North American Talking Guitar Session. I'm Ben and I'm with a dear friend of mine, Mr. Ben Parker.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben. The two Bens on the sofa.
The two Bennies.
So, Ben and I first met, I think, back in 2014. I was supporting Shane Filan on a UK and Ireland tour, and Ben was the MD, the music director of the band. And then from there, we sort of did a lot of writing together, and we also did a bunch of gigs together, and have just been mates ever since. But you have got to be, and I know I do say this to a few of the people we've had in here on the sofa, but you have to be one of the busiest guys I know in music.
Yeah, I think basically I'm a workaholic and I'm so scared of stopping because I'll then have to actually feel the pain that I just keep going.
So just for our viewers that don't know you as such, so you're just a quick recap. You are a music director. You are a songwriter.
Yeah.
You are a producer.
Yeah.
You are a author.
Yeah.
And you are also have been in bands signed.
Yes.
You are also in currently a very exciting band called Son of Town Hall.
Yes.
So where do you start? Where do we start with that? Where do you go? You lead. And you play guitar.
I do.
That's your number one instrument.
Just in case we forget what we're all here to talk about at the end of the day. Yes, I play guitar and have done since I was 11 years old, when my granddad found a guitar in a skip and dug it out and gave it to me, and it was awful, and we polished it up and turned it into something that could be played. That was how it all started. And my old man took me to see Clapton play a lot at the Albert Hall when he used to do those long runs of shows.
That was my first gig when I was.
Was it?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he was God for me, and my dad always used to say, if you can ever play anything like Clapton, I'll be really proud. So that clearly became my life goal.
Look, Dad.
Yeah. Look, Dad, I can play Wonderful Tonight, but not the good bit, just the chords. And then. Through doing, my first job was transcription, so I transcribed guitar tab books and did a load of incredible things. This was like from about the age of 19, so at 19 I was sat listening to Radiohead and Queen and Zeppelin and very closely going in and working out how they made the sounds they made and putting it into notation, because I was kind of trained to read and write music properly, and that then worked really well for me going into doing transcription. And then I kind of was on a roll and formed my own business when the notation software Sibelius came out. I started a business because I thought the stuff we'd been using in my previous job was quite archaic and complex, and then suddenly it was this really easy desktop thing. So got really into sheet music design and the rules of it and how it should be laid out and how it should look. And spent 3 years running my own business doing that and doing a lot of work for Warner Chappell and various other publishers.
I never knew that.
Yeah, that was my first thing in.
And what a way to
the first proper job I did when I ran my own business was I got given, I think it was like a 40-book series called The History of Popular Music. And it was basically going through old folio sheets of songs written from the 1910s through to the noughties, to the 90s, because it was mid-90s when I was doing this. And there was like 4 books per decade, and they were like the biggest selling songs of those decades. So I literally went through all of those. There were 40 songs in each book, and we did 160 songs per decade. So in doing that, what starts to happen is you start to learn people's tricks and how they move chords around. And,
that's going to be my next question.
You know, it becomes really not clear, but you start hearing the same moves people make, you know, and then even right through from people like Donaldson, Kahn and Cole Porter in the 40s and 50s, right through to a lot of that. You know, I remember getting the 80s stuff and going, yes, all those amazing songs. Now I can learn how to play Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, you know, and other Starship hits. We built this city, and you know, it's just learning that each decade and each era had its colour,
but still had that kind of core.
Massively, great songs.
Yeah,
but had that kind of real chordal flavour. So you move into the 70s and things got a little bit bluesy, and then you move into the 80s and pop tightened up and it got a bit more angular again and more exciting. Then the 90s, everything sort of stretched and went grungy and slack, you know, and you just saw this arc. So it was a really interesting way of kind of intensely learning. And through doing that, I've started working with a guy who would do all the piano stuff with me, all the piano arrangements, and then I formed a band with him and we got signed, a band called Ben and Jason. Took us hours to think of that name.
I was going to say, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's a big one. And we then ended up literally making a few demos, signed to a label called Go Beat, who were part of Universal, and then released 4 albums doing that. So I then spent the next 6 or 7 years of my life touring and making records, like properly with a label behind me.
Wow.
So very blessed to be in that situation. Probably I think I was about 26 when I signed that deal.
To go from that guitar and skip
I guess that. Yeah.
Wow, what a journey.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was talking with Richard earlier today and we were listening to a song, and I was saying, you know, if you can just, you know, piano chords and a vocal, and if the song stands up, you can hear the production around it. As long as you've got a good song, will always stand up on its own.
Yes.
And so you must find that, you know, for having done all of the transcribing, that when you go into a studio to write, 'cause I know you write with a lot of other artists, that obviously you're trying to pour, you know, get inspiration out of the artist, so that you're not dictating where to go, but you're kind of like moving the ship.
Yeah, I think what helps me is having that stuff in me subconsciously, because I think if you think about it too much, you stop. Like, I believe that songwriting is about finding the space where you're not over controlling the scenario and you're allowing the smoothest flow of things to happen. And often when you mess about and chuck something out there in falsetto and you sort of go, oh my god, I love the brick wall, you know, that sometimes, certainly not then, can become like the hook of the song. And you hear that a lot in pop, where it's, you know, and people like Paul Simon have been interviewed about how they wrote that great hook on one of the Graceland songs, you know, and he's like, I don't know, I just sang it and it felt a little bit stupid, but in the same way it sort of felt like the sort of thing people might respond to if they hear it on the radio.
So when you approach songwriting, do you, for example, if you go into a session, I know that whenever we've ever done anything together, it'll always be, I'll always try and come with an idea, or you'll come in with an idea and you'll just kind of work around. But if you're writing on your own, do you, or preparing for a session, do you just mull around the guitar and let that kind of creative mind go and you just sort of mumble a melody, or is it some people go lyrics, some people go...
Yeah, it's really hard when you've got an artist coming in, because you've got to make a decision about how much of an idea and how much of you want to put in the space before it becomes all of you together. And some people really like walking in and having 3 ideas to choose from and working on one and kind of crafting one. And some people kind of like to go in and immediately from the off throw a load of stuff out there from zero and not have a start point. But I work a lot with a good friend of mine, Jimmy Sims, and
Jimmy played.
Jimmy and I played. Jimmy plays with George Ezra and played with Brian Ferry and a bunch of, you know, he's a really talented musician, and he's not only just a bass player but can play guitars and keyboards and is great with synths and things. So he and I tend to flesh out an idea, but basically the more it's 2 mates messing about having a laugh, the better the idea. And if it becomes 2 people who write songs for a living and produce music, then it starts to sound like 2 people who write songs.
Yeah, I remember I did a couple of those songwriting retreats, and I remember one time I went over to Sweden, and you know, an A&R guy would come out and he would tell you what you're pitching for, sort of thing. And I put in a room with 4 people, and I was the sort of singer, and then they had the track guy, and then there was a really great guitarist, and then there was a top line, but it was just like there was just so many creative minds in one room that it was, and everybody was listening to what they had said. We were pitching like a, I don't know, X band, whatever. And they were all kind of like listening to tracks and then trying to work out progressions, and I just was in the end I just got a guitar and just started playing
Yeah.
a couple of chords and just said,
But that's what I mean about it just coming from the source. Whatever it is you've just got to open it up. And I battle with it all of the time because I'm a complete technical nerd. And when I sit in front of a computer, and I love using Pro Tools, and I love using plugins, and I love all the things that whenever I work with any producers, the first thing I'm doing is looking over their shoulder at how they're manipulating the sound in the software. So that's a really big part of what I love doing. But I battle with how much I have space for that in a session versus the free spirit plucking ideas out of nowhere. And that's where I love working with other people, because then you can kind of share it a bit, and someone could be recording the main bulk of the main instrument while you're sort of floating around with ideas, and I can turn around and tidy that up and put some drums with it whilst they're floating around with the ideas. You can sort of, that's what Jimmy and I do a lot, sort of one person can go off and flutter around and the other person can sit around and sort of knock the idea into shape. But both are as important as one another, and I can be a bit controlling, and I find it difficult sometimes to battle with, you know, my workaholic, let's get the nerdy stuff down, with my free spirit, you know, yeah man, let's hug trees and see where the ideas come from.
Okay,
I'm not saying that all songwriters are hippies.
So touring for you, because obviously we met on the Shane tour when
Yes.
you were MDing for Shane.
Yeah.
Is that like a release for you then, as because you were playing, I mean, you were playing your guitar and you were playing electric, you were playing acoustic. You kind of put the whole band together. You work the dynamics.
And do all the stuff for the small amount of backing track that we had. I was producing and sort of programming that as well, and working with the original recordings and making sure that if we had strings when it was live, things were like the right tempo. And I mean, that's what I like about touring, and you and I were talking about this earlier, is that you get into a zone where that's all you're doing. And my life is so diverse. I actually really like just getting on a tour bus and being told that sound check's at 4 and dinner's at 5:30 and the show's at 8, and that's my day.
But you were still writing songs
for a month. I know.
I remember, because every place we go to, every venue,
we set up a little studio. Well, that's the workaholic in me coming out. Damn, trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Well, that was interesting because Jimmy and I were writing a lot with Amy McDonald then for her last album, Under Stars, and
which got Record of the Weekend, was singing.
Yeah, it was great. It was, and it's done so brilliantly as well in places like Germany and Switzerland, where she's kind of really big. But it's really nice to see it doing that. But Amy is someone who likes to hear some ideas to get the ball rolling, so we would get those running, and in between the tour sessions we were doing sessions with her, and she's so brilliant at kind of hearing something and knowing exactly if it's the right thing she wants to roll with. And then when she does, she's just one of the fastest kind of top line, as far as when she hits a melody and writes words and works with the music. She's so good and so quick at it. It's such a natural thing. And I think she's someone who just has the sources immediately open, and she's not struggling with where it's coming from and what part of anything she's doing. And everyone you work with has a different way of working. And my thing is just try and learn, have some space to sit back and learn from whatever's happening in the room, rather than trying to put yourself in the room. Yeah,
of course. And that's where I first met Jimmy, because I supported Amy in 2013, and her stage presence, but her lyric and her melody on all of her tracks is incredible, really incredible. Okay, so just talk guitar for a second.
Love to.
So on that tour, when you're touring, just tell us briefly what your rig is, what your acoustic is. And
so I'm so simple. I'm someone who plays guitar in songs. I don't really play guitar, do you know what I mean? I'm a song player. So everything is about things being really simple. I'm not a huge bank of effects person. I'm for those tours with Shane Filan, the acoustic was my oldest guitar, Martin HD 28, with a Mimesis Kudos pickup, which I loved, and was great in that live sound, because sounded really real, but also still had a bit of cut to it to get to work in. And then electrics, a Strat of Jimmy's actually, and a Telly, and literally like 4 pedals, and an orange tiny Terror amp. So I'm a big believer in not having huge amplifiers on stage. Front of house always prefer you not to be making a hell of a lot of noise on stage.
I remember you're always very conscious of that, of not being too loud on stage.
Well, we're all on in-ears, so you can kind of have exactly the mix you want right here. You do miss the feel of it a little bit with in-ears, but you know, it's so much better to roll into a venue and know that that's your mix, without having to rely on the difference of the shape of the room. You know, as you will know when you do wedge gigs and you'll play one the night before and it's the same size, same capacity, get to the next one, completely different sound. And that the in-ears take that out of it. So yeah, guitar-wise, doing that, I very much keep it simple. The Martin, I used the Dove a few times, the Avian Dove.
That's right, you got an Avian Dove.
Yeah. And the Fender Telecaster and Strat and the orange amp. Done. Simple.
Nice. Simple is good.
Yeah.
Simple
and then
good.
now with Son of Town Hall, which is...
I was going to go on to that next.
So Son of Town Hall is my project with American singer-songwriter David Berkeley. He's in America, I'm here. We wanted to call it the name of a vessel that's done that journey across the Atlantic, and we found this incredible story of a raft made out of junk called the Son of Town Hall that a guy in his 80s built in the 1990s because he dreamt always of building something with his bare hands and sailing it across the Atlantic. So this thing just looked like a sort of ghost ship. It's incredible. You can see pictures of it on YouTube.
Well, we'll put some pictures into this video.
So the more we read about the story, and I kept seeing this name, Son of Town Hall, and I kept thinking gangs of New York style outfits, and it being late Victorian rather than it being about the 1990s. So I bought a top hat and a bowler hat in Portobello Market as a kind of joke. And then we did a show, and in the show in London, the first show we did, we just played on this story that we were actually on the raft. And that's built and grown into a concept now where the show's called The Adventures of Son of Town Hall, in 2 acts, and we kind of intersperse talking with the audience and telling them a bit more about the journey and what it's like for 2 men to be stuck alone for months on end out at sea, to what it's like to miss the things we left behind versus feel the temptations of the new world. You know, so it's this immersive, almost theatrical experience. We get everyone to sing. It's not about us, it's about the audience and us. What we do together is the show. We don't just present the show. You know, we get everyone singing, we ask people what their temptations might be, and they have to tell us in the intermission. You know, there's a real, you know, we hand out a book where they have to draw a portrait of their face and put their email address in, and we call it our Facebook. You know, because it's important when you're at sea to remember people's names, and you meet a lot of unsavouries. If you forget someone's name, they can get pretty angry. So you can have this book as a reference. And you know, and little things like that. And we get the book back at the end of the show, and everyone has drawn the most incredible picture of themselves.
That's amazing.
You know, it's like...
That's amazing.
Because people are just into it. You know, and written super lovely... Yeah, absolutely. It's just all about that. So we have... Yeah, and we've done a bunch of tours in the States, and that's all...
But they've sold out. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it's really starting to happen.
Because I remember when you actually came and did... when we first brought over our first batch of bourgeois guitars...
Yeah.
I remember you had just started Son of Town Hall,
yeah,
and we did an event for Bourgeois, and you were demoing the guitars for the audience, and you had your bowler hat on. Yes. You just bought it, and you were just and you played a couple of the songs that you had just written. Yeah. I remember you saying, which we'll put a link to these in the video, but you were saying, this is going to be a 2-part song, but I'm just going to do it all.
Yeah.
And so for me, is, you know, we spend all of our lives, you know, outside looking in through social media, watching that kind of grow organically into this thing where you're doing sellout shows in the UK and sellout shows in the US is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's just absolutely incredible. And also it kind of relates to what I've been talking about with a couple of other people that we've had in on the sofa, about that whole, independent artist and how you can make that work, the singer-songwriter or, whatever genre of music it is, you can have a career in doing what you love as a musician and make it work.
Yeah.
There's a business behind everybody, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that I've learned so much about business in the last sort of 10 years about, mainly from being at rock bottom a lot of times as an artist financially and working out how I can avoid that and looking at what my strengths are and looking at how I can diversify. And one of the things we do with Son of Town Hall is that everything is about the budget, which is like so not what the show's about. And when we're off stage, we do roll. The great thing about it is that, he's one of my best mates, David, and we are those characters when we're on the road together, and we sit in cars and do 5-hour drives in the States, and we riff on everything, and that is what we then take on stage, and that plus the concept plus the songs and the performance, I think creates this really special thing, not just for the audience but for me personally, having played music and other people's music for 20 years. I never thought I'd get to 42 and pretty much have the richest creative experience I've ever had with my own music and performance. But the backbone of that is organisation.
Yeah.
Because if we threw ourselves out there and just went at it without thinking about what we were spending and without putting figures down, and it would become a bit of a car crash, because it's, what it's like. There are emails going everywhere. People agree to give you a gig for a certain fee, but you can't find the email and all of that stuff, So we just mark all of those bits of communication, so when you go into a tour, you can already see, you can do a rough income projection, you can look at what you might sell merch-wise, you can look at what you sell merch-wise this tour versus the last one, what's changed, why is it better, why is it worse, what do we need merch-wise.
That's a big thing, isn't it?
We don't have a full album yet. We've got a 4-track EP and a 2-track vinyl, and everything's online as well. But the great thing for us, because it's concept driven, we sell a 6-cent Son of Town Hall stamp, which has been designed, but we sell it for $5. That's the joke. 6 cents, $5. And it's big, so you need to find something pretty big to put it on to send to make it worthwhile. But you've come up with ideas like that, but then you're looking per piece, what does it cost to get made? Then you're selling it for such and such. But really the kicker is the kind of long playing record, because that's and especially in America, the merch, they're big on merch. It's part of their experience for the night.
It's I spoke about this with Bruce, Emma Stevens. It seems to be, and having done it from my own personal experience of that independent artist, it's just incredible to see that it is so viable. But you do need, behind that creativity, there is that element of you're running your own business. So just quickly, I want to just jump over to you as an author, because I didn't know that you were an author until one Christmas, it was December, leading up to Christmas, this email went around. You were like, "Oh, I'm number 1 in the book chart for children's ukuleles and guitar." And that blew my mind. How did you? Obviously, now you've talked to me about the notation side of things. I get it. But
when
were you approached, or?
When the story is basically from being signed to then not being signed, and again not being on my financial situation. I needed fast to find something to pay the rent, so a mate of mine was working in a school teaching kids, a junior school, just teaching them guitar and piano, and he needed someone to step in for him one day and asked me, and I did it, and I really enjoyed it. And after a couple of months of sort of wasteland worrying about money, it was really nice to go and feel of use. So I did a day, and then I got asked back to do another couple of days, and then the slot became free to do a day of my own and have a running day. And then there was one point where I was doing 6 full days a week teaching, and I did on and off in different configurations. I did 10 years of it teaching kids, and in doing that started to see, well, I started making my own notebook as to, because you give children again and again the same sheets with the same stuff on in order to explain things like what the notes are on the stave, and you know what the different instruments are and what clefs they use and all that stuff. And so I started this little folder, and other teachers would come in and go, oh, can I borrow your blah, because I knew how to use Sibelius, knew how notation should look. So started creating these really nice looking things, because when you're putting anything in front of someone, especially children, especially now, they're used to big bright sort of HD tablet screens. Anything that isn't moving and is black and white has to be super clear. Especially notation that you're trying to teach them, and it's difficult for them anyway. So you've got to understand how best to put that across. So this folder developed, and then just by chance, a friend of mine who has had a lot of success with kind of arts and craft books in the States as a publisher, she just had a few ideas, bit of an entrepreneur, pulled a bunch of ideas together, had a load of big selling books in the States for things like stitch work and crafts and all kinds of different things. Said to me, I've done some research on Amazon, and ukulele is probably the most popular book that's selling at the moment. It's a very popular instrument. If you can get your book paired with the top selling instrument, that really helps. That sort of stuff. Do you want to do a book? And I was desperate for the money, and she was going to pay me a little advance to do it, and I was like, oh right, I'll do it, fine. And out of the notes that I'd made teaching and my idea of how best to teach kids an instrument, I put a book together in a week and then gave it to her, and she said, oh, okay, let's tidy it up, and she did some editing on it. And it's Amazon print on demand, so you just upload a PDF. You don't have to start getting things printed and loads of outlay. And she said, let's just see how it goes for 6 months. And we did 10,000 in 6 months, which was a real indication that there was a market there. So she said, what else can we do? So I said, well, guitar and piano. So we did guitar and piano. Then we did recorder. Then we did keyboards, like kids' keyboards. Then we did banjo, harmonica. God, I can't remember the others.
But you're integrating all of the first book. And
yeah, absolutely. Using very similar shell of like the arc of learning and what you put where, and I think now I've got 28 books.
Wow.
Out there.
So for our
real beginners though, there's no, like, the minute anyone
we've probably got a lot of parents. Our viewers,
yeah.
Parents, we can put a link to.
Yeah, just search for my name on Amazon, and I mean within a year or two, I think we had the best-selling beginner's guitar book in America and the UK.
Amazing. And the
ukulele.
So, what's next? What are you having any time off, or are you? I know you're working on a project.
I'm home for a bit. I've just been in Las Vegas recording with a band called Human Nature, producing their next record with a good friend of mine called Steve Fitzmaurice. Mm-hmm. And that was amazing. It was like a 10-week from no one having any material whatsoever. It was covers through to a finished mastered record in 10 weeks, which is amazing going, but it was hard work. And so that was busy. And before that, I was doing some Son of Town Hall stuff. Then I just got back from the US doing Son of Town Hall. I'm home for a few months, which is great. But I have the Son of Town Hall album to kind of mix and finish. Because I have a studio in Ladbroke Grove as well, where I do a lot of the writing and recording and things. So I work there. And then in October, I go to Japan for 2 months to work with a singer, a big pop singer over there called Utada Hikaru, doing basically arena shows, playing in her band.
Wow.
So that takes me through to the middle of December.
And then you definitely will. Well, then you have the books.
Then I'll have, then I'll have a
Ben,
bike.
it's so good to see you. Thanks
you,
so
man.
much.
Thank
I was
you.
going to ask, would you mind playing a couple of songs for us?
I will, yes.
For more information on Ben Parker and all of the different things that he's up to at the moment, we're going to put plenty of links in this video. So Son of Ton Hall, the books, and any tours you've got up and coming. Thanks a lot,
Ben.
mate.
Cheers.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.